Yeah, I will. What? No.
Yes.
Okay, we do a stone, scissors, papers on this.
Why?
Because when I will not read this and
And you will mess it up.
Yeah.
You will mess it up.
Okay, so let's do this.
So, it's open already. Excellent.
And now it's time. Good evening. This is IOTOPS. I hope you're in the right room. Excellent. This is your. I'm Alexei, and Hank is sitting next to me. Let's get started. We have fairly packed agenda.
Really fairly packed.
Okay. Shall I do it then? So you should be familiar with Notewell, but I have to say specific words to you, which I will do now. I'll have to use specific words when projecting Notewell. This is the IETF Notewell. It is a reminder about the processes and policies, including about conduct, privacy, and intellectual property rights you agree to follow when you participate in the IETF. Please read it carefully. You are encouraged to read the source document for which Notewell refers. If you have questions, please talk to the working group chairs or area directors.
And you are allowed to stare at this for about a minute. Which I think is about now. Moving on. So as an in-person attendee, you might have noticed the QR codes at the mics or at the entrance. Please scan those to use the Insight tool to get in queue. This is in order to give also a fair participation to remote participants who can't just raise their hands. They will do it also online with the tool, so we can mix physical in-person and per remote in the line. So for everybody who's not on site, that's pretty much in the Meet Echo with your raise hand symbol. This is to make everything fair. Also, obviously, this meeting is recorded, and so whatever you say will, be found on the internet.
And now we need a note taker, and we cannot move with the meeting until we do that. Excellent, thank you. And if people can help out while Michael is presenting, that would be great. I can post a link to the notes. Thank you.
Yeah, Alexei will post the link to the notes. It's also, of course, in the agenda. It's the one icon that looks like a notebook page. So this is rather obvious. I want to point out that sometimes Meet Echo isn't really doing what it's intended to do, especially if you use, I don't know, mobile devices or unusual operating systems. If you find issues, there's a Meet Echo issue. You can file them. The URL is the bottom one. Please do so. It really helps the community. And from here, we have... sorry, my voice is a little bit bad today. We have a chat room. The meeting materials can be found on the data tracker, just as elaborated. We found our minutes takers, would be the second link, and the session. Obviously, if you are in Meet Echo, you can see it, but the link will be captured here in eternity. Our agenda is what we just do here right now, telling you what's going to happen. And we have a lot of items today. There will be some reshuffling, so please look at this agenda right now. And
just to note that the fourth item on the slide is not going to be presented, but we have an update on another document at the end that will be done by Karsten. So this is a minor agenda.
I'm not presenting an OL.
no, the Elliot and Karsten are, as it says here.
There's the same link twice.
Oh, well,
Will not shown anyways.
No matter, because the fourth item is not going to be presented anyway. So,
Exactly.
so sorry about that.
So the phantom item, that is the fourth item, will not be presented today. Exactly. And we have two last-minute contender, which also have the same topic, unfortunately. So one of them is about using mud in constrained environments. And the second one is actually about 7228 bis, although this says otherwise. So these slides, the agenda has been bashed in the last minute. If there's any more bashing required, these are bashable, obviously. Going once, going twice. Okay, happy with that. And with that, I would like to defer to our first presenter, that is, according to the agenda, Michael Richardson, about authorized update to the MUD URLs. The floor is yours. And also the clicker. Right?
I'll present just a second. Oh, hold on.
Oh, you want me to start talking? Yeah, I can do that without the slides. Sure. Authorized update to MUD URLs, document that was adopted last time, I think maybe before. It started in Ops AWG some ancient ages ago. Thank you. And has moved here. What do you need to know about it? Fundamentally, it's the fact that if you want to get a MUD URL from a device, there's a growing number of ways to do it, but the original three was IDEV-ID, LLDP, and DHCP. The only one that is kind of securable against malware taking over your device is IDEV-ID, but it's also the one that's impossible to update in theory, or very hard. Do a product recall, perhaps. So the question is, how can we evolve your MUD profiles if you need multiple URLs? The answer is, well, you're going to have to use DHCP or LLDP, and then that becomes a question of whether or not your refrigerator can claim to be your vacuum cleaner and therefore get its privileges instead. And we'd rather that wasn't the case. So the idea is basically you can change the URL, but you can only change the last component. And once you get that last component and you get the new MUD file, within that there is actually a URL for the MUD file, a self-reference if you like, and then that becomes actually the new MUD URL, and then you can actually change it again. So if you actually want to do a merger and acquisition or something and change names, then you can do that in its 2 steps and it works, but it still keeps, as it's shown here, the attacker from doing something bad with your stuff. So that was the thing. Please read it. It is more than mature enough, ready for working group last call, but whether we're actually in that state or not, it needs review comments, and that's really it. Any questions about the content, about the process, about why you haven't volunteered to review it? Okay, well, that's it.
Would you like chairs to try to solicit some reviews before last call to see how ready it is, or should we just go into last call and see if we succeed and
Jump into last call, see if we can do it. Ask for you know what? Ask for a DNS directorate review.
please action those 2 things in the
Okay,
minutes that
I will do
we're
that.
about to do that.
Yeah, DNS specifically, but obviously the other ones are also good, but DNS specifically probably because they are people who know something about URLs.
And probably art directorate as well.
Sure. Yeah, I will actually
Or whoever is doing HTTP.
just mash all the buttons on the request. Thank you.
What?
Yeah.
You need to,
Badge?
you need to use the tool.
What do I do?
One exception per session. So typically you would have to use the tool to raise your hand,
Just
but I can
Yeah.
do 1 exception per
very
session.
simple question.
You're eating that one up.
Did-
Okay.
Did MUD exist in 2021?
Yes.
That's my simple question.
Yeah, it
Wait,
was published in 2018.
But you have to state your name.
I thought it was recently invented.
Sorry, but you have to state your name for the recording at the mic. You have to state your name at the mic.
I thought everybody knew my, sorry.
No.
I'm not that famous. Yeah, my name is Bechet Sarikaya. I think Michael knows me.
Yeah, Michael knows you, but maybe not everybody on the recording will.
Okay, and it's raining outside, so if you want more mud, go outside. Yeah.
Next up would be okay, either Carsten or Elliot. Elliot is moving on to the stage. Take it away, and I think we will have. Yeah, there's a lot of traps. Yeah, you will have your clicker associated in a second.
All right. So this is a draft about ownerships and licenses by Karsten and me. It's also transferred over from ops area. The numbering on this is wrong. It's actually -01, but that's because I mashed into my head an update from ops area working group, and then when it came over here, we needed to start renumbering again. So it's really -01, and it was updated actually this morning. So the status is, so we posted this to address Zhufeng's Yang Doctor review. Thank you, Zhufeng. And we have a few small issues to run through. So again, the purpose of this draft is essentially to convey licensing of the files themselves in terms of how they may be redistributed or not. The idea that they wouldn't be redistributed is a little weird, but there it is. So this slide is really small. I apologize for that. So I suggest you look at the meeting materials. I'm just going to run through the issues, and then we'll talk about next steps. So the first question is whether this should be tied to an owner and originator. This we probably think, and these are old issues. Like these are in the document. We think this one should be owners. Like owner should specify what the rights are, and we think the right term is owner. The second, and by the way, please just get to the microphone or request the microphone if you disagree. Otherwise, I'm going to run through this pretty quickly. Data typing. So this is one. Should we simply say that a URI contains a colon and an SPDX license doesn't? And these are the SPDX license strings are just very simple strings without a colon, and this is like a miserable shortcut. And Karsten thinks this is the right thing to do, like to combine to simplify the model. I don't. I think we should use appropriate data typing. And if you, my proposal is that Karsten and I flip a coin to figure out the right answer, unless anybody here has an opinion, because it's not that important. And if you think it's that important, please just post something to the list saying, yeah, that's important. Oh, you've got a coin ready to go. We'll do it privately. Oh, that's okay. I don't think we're that cheap. I want a toonie. So the next question was, the next issue is how to express a license type for derivative work where a base license is different from the license of the change. Now, the way that this is basically a Yang model. The way it's structured is you can have a list of licenses, right? So we have the Yang model has essentially two choices. You can either do free-form text for a license for one or more licenses, or you can do SPDX license tags, and you can even combine them because this is a list of lists. So we think we have enough flexibility to do this, or at least I think we have enough flexibility to do this. What we want to avoid, or at least what I want to avoid, is having to have lawyers in the room to find all the different license types. So Karsten, and maybe you'll need to go to the microphone for this one in a bit, Karsten, wants to enable owner-author changes to express their license. I think it's simple enough to say that the person who's updating the model takes on the responsibility for understanding what existing licenses there are. And this is unlikely to happen too often with MUD, but it might happen with non-MUD objects that this model covers later. Karsten.
Yeah, Carsten Bormann. So this is just a reflection of a general principle. that designing data models without having enough examples to decide issues is difficult. And what we probably need to do is write down a few examples and then decide which of our two perspectives actually gave the right answer.
Right. I suspect that there will be some lawyers that want to enter the room on that issue, but we can try. So this is one where we sort of need to nail down, and it's somewhat important to nail it down before we go to last call. Then the rest of these are sort of tasks, like check that a single owner is able to offer multiple license types. We think this is just an old issue that's left, that we left text in the document because we now have list of lists, so we think that's covered. Then the other issue is, the next task is create a demonstration CI makefile with Yang validation for either a MUD file or when using the license tag that we're defining in this OL schema for things other than MUD. Which brings us to the next task, which is that Med requested that we split out the model so that we have the grouping in one model and its use in another, so that you could use, so you don't have to augment, you don't have to import the base MUD model in order to do license tagging for a Yang module. We think that's a very reasonable thing to do, and we're going to do it, unless somebody says don't. Then finally, we want to create some text around an example of that. And then we need to update the change log. So that's pretty much everything we need to do. So a couple of things here. First, I invite comments on any of these issues, either here with whatever remaining time we have for this issue, or on the mailing list, on the IOTOPS mailing list. Then once we've gone through all of that, and Karsten and I have punched each other out enough on these issues, we'll do another update of the draft. Hopefully we'll take it at a pace more quickly than we've done in the past. And it's important because these files, like when you start dealing with static Yang-based files, you do have to worry about the licensing. We do want to make sure that can get done. So we'll post an update for working group, and then we'll move towards a working group last call. The other thing we want to do is probably move this to a more public and more governed Git organization. And that's it. And really that should have said you, especially to the reviewers. Karsten.
Yeah, you can see the pattern. It's just a discussion between Elliot and me. I just wanted to point out that Elliot said something twice that could have been misunderstood as this is about licensing of Yang models. No, this is about the licensing of the
instantiations
of the data in flight that is generated by this model.
Yeah, it's the instantiation. Thank you for correcting me.
So the assumption is that the data model that gives rise to this is complicated enough that there even is a copyright in the result of that. And that can very much be true for MUD files.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Anybody looking forward to lawyers being in the room? Okay, so Daniel is, we'll just note that in the minutes. Okay, see you.
Did you take the clicker with you?
No, it's right on the desk.
Perfect. Ah, there it is. So with that, next in line is our updated agenda is Jim, actually, already. Is Jim in the room? Wonderful. And the topic is, I'm helping my co-chair here, is IOTS DNS security and privacy guidelines. Exactly. And this will work in a second.
Okay.
It should work now.
Hear me okay? Eat the microphone. Yep.
Nah, little more.
Cool.
Or just take it with your hand.
It might be easier to move to tall person's mode. Okay. I want to do a quick recap about this draft. Alex, you said talk about call for adoption. Sorry, I'm relatively new for IETF processes.
The call for adoption is until Wednesday, which is today, isn't it? I think it's ending today.
Okay.
So we'll obviously double check, but I think so far it's positive. There was several people saying.
And if you're making a good impression here right now, you might get more feedback on the list today. So
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll see how we go. Yeah. So I'm one of 5 authors just presenting it here. A quick recap. This is results of research by UCL, University College London, and INRIA. We sort of covered this last time, but just a quick recap. We've got IoT specific guidelines for DNS as a result of some research they've done. This is a result of environment, actually I think 35 devices now that they're doing some active and passive testing on. And it identified a number of DNS related problems with IoT devices. These are the list of issues there. And again, we went over those last time in Madrid. Any questions on any of that? I'm not the researcher that's done this, but I'll try and answer it as best I can if you have. Okay, I'm going to keep going then. All right. So I put this together as a sort of summary of the BCP that we're proposing. I broke it down into what would be recommendations in terms of the what's done on the device, the stub resolver, in terms of let's say complying with RSCs or doing mitigations, what's on the resolver and what's on the authoritative server. I think, Carsten, you've got a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I skimmed over the draft, but now I noticed that I didn't quite understand the scope of the thing. Are you talking about implementation issues?
Yes.
Are you talking about disclosure because of the way DNS information is offered in the DNS system?
One of the things is that based on the pattern of DNS queries, you could effectively identify a device. That's certainly one of the things that they've noted in their research in general, but most of it's related to bad implementations, bad behavior. For instance, queries originating from the same port all the time, or not ordering the TC bit in DNS transactions.
So there are a lot of things in there that are not IoT specific, but you have to consider for IoT devices as well.
Correct, yes. So really this is about saying, please follow the RFCs, and this is why. Collecting it together in one place for manufacturers to better use as a guide. Cool. So on the devices, you can see we're saying doing things like use encrypted DNS, for instance. Make sure you do source port transaction ID randomization appropriately. Set your resolvers correctly, support EDNS and truncation, these kind of things. There's some potential, I guess, operational related stuff there about saying clients should follow TTLs, but of course manufacturers should put TTLs of the appropriate values in to the domain names that they're using to manage the devices. One of the things I mentioned in the next slide, I think, is related to DNSSEC, and the devices can check the authenticated data bit when it's returned to see if they are using DNSSEC. Talking of which, if you're going to use DNSSEC, you always need to do that on the resolver. In terms of, let's say, mitigating some of the issues that have been seen with TTLs, using serve stale on the resolver is a useful thing. And operators of networks, particularly private networks, obviously, may want to restrict the resolution to known management domains. That's useful in case devices are compromised. And operators might also block resolution to well-known open resolvers for similar reasons. On the authoritative server side, manufacturers should sign zones that they're using for management or data collection. And we're saying that manufacturers should publish their domains so that network operators can secure resolution to those known management domains. And obviously authoritative servers actually manage the TTLs themselves. What we've got in changes from the first version that we talked about in Madrid really is the use of DNSSEC. The section in that has been significantly improved. We removed something that said have a copy of the root zone on your resolvers. That's a good DNS practice. But as Michael Richardson pointed out, probably not necessarily specific for IoT devices. And we clarified some stuff on the configuration of DNS servers themselves for the end devices, and special thanks to Michael for all the reviews he's done. So discussions on any modifications we might need. I'm not sure who has read the draft. I can see from the enthusiasm in the room and the number of hands it may be perhaps limited. So any comments welcome from that, obviously.
Okay, so I have read the draft, and I have actually commented privately on this draft before. I do think it's a good draft to do. I think it's a perfect thing for IoT Ops to be working on. I do think there's some more work to do. Most of the stuff you have in the security considerations section probably needs to move up as an editorial comment. And I would like to go through more of the DOH, DOQ, DOT text with you in terms of resolver discovery and how that's meant to happen for IoT devices. I think it's a little trickier than what's written there in terms of devices that do not have any sort of management interface. But one of the things we can ponder is how that might be made better. So another possibility that you might consider is to add like an unresolved issues or hard problems section, which is non-normative, but said these are things that maybe the community needs to be working on a little more. And having a good awareness about, say, what we're doing here versus what other organizations are doing will really help inform that section as well. So I think there's good work that's been done. There's good work that can continue to be done.
All right, thanks, Elliot. Any other specific comments? Otherwise, I'll go through what I thought we might need to progress. Okay, so there's DNS over COPE coming along. I'm not quite sure what the status of that is, but that may be something we'll add in terms of the encrypted DNS protocols. That seems to make sense and fit with what we've got already. Do we want something like a diagram as per the slide I showed earlier? I don't know if that would make it easier in terms of communicating things, or whether that's not necessary. I did wonder if there's enough problem description, try to strike a bit of a balance between explaining the rationale for the recommendations and obviously not writing War and Peace on potential research that's done, which is in the research papers. So if anybody's got any comments on that, if there's enough sort of reasoning, explanations and the mitigations, that would be useful.
Just quickly answering the question, DNS over CORP is in the RFC editor queue. So it's in... DNS over CORP is in the RFC editor's queue, so it's improved document.
Okay, that's great. So there's nothing stopping us putting it in and whatever. Okay, great. Thank you.
So, answering your question as a participant, I think some rationale would be nice, because especially if it's going to be a long-lived document, or it gets published at RFC, then get revised. If you cannot answer 10 years later why it was decided this way, maybe the reason is no longer going to be true at the time. So having some rationale would help in kind of backtracking and understanding.
Yeah, so there is some rationale in there. I just don't know if it's the right amount or not. So I'd appreciate a view on whether it's, it's like marking your own homework if I look at it. So, okay. Any other comments, questions? Once, twice, three times. Okay, done. Thank you very much.
I know. So clear. And there you go.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to just introduce, this is some new work that we're calling privacy preference declarations. I'm going to be spending a lot of the time in the slide deck here kind of talking about some of the norms and kind of justification for why this is important. And hopefully that will also then make sense why this is being introduced in IoT Ops, aside from the fact that this work is directed specifically at home IoT devices. So one of the things that it's very important to get out of the way, particularly when I'm following a talk about DNS security and privacy, is that we're following a very different privacy philosophy than what may be common in IETF. There's one which is centered around confidentiality, secrecy, anonymity, which I see as the common definition of privacy that's kind of seen network-centered here at IETF. The one that we're trying to push in this work is one which is much more around user agency, user-centered privacy, which is actually more about transparency and control and exposing potential optionality that we don't necessarily think of when we design these devices. And so in particular, what we're approaching is the privacy policy narrative. So this is probably not a controversial statement, but most of us don't really read privacy policies, right? They exist out there. They're designed for lawyers. This is why I'm excited to have the lawyers in the room. But the real issue here is that wouldn't it be much nicer in order to get better transparency and better optionality to have your own personal privacy policy or a household privacy policy in which we could use this privacy policy to signal to these devices, these IoT devices in the home, what sorts of data handling practices are acceptable, which ones are less acceptable, and so on. And so the issue here is that rather than having every single IoT device vendor out there creating their own APIs, their own user interfaces, having to evaluate these, having to run them by the lawyers, we can much more drastically simplify the expression of privacy preferences as well as individual or household expectations surrounding privacy. And this enables the possibility for things like consent pathways and automating privacy compliance potentially, although we can talk about that separately. But it enables these pathways to be much less friction, and it also means that they don't become a mechanism for companies to badger you. The interaction is inverted. And then, of course, there's other interesting things that you can do related to AI, because, of course, we're obligated to talk about AI everywhere. Regarding personalization of privacy preferences, there's lots of research that I've done in the past that shows that AI can be used to actually help guide you towards an expression of preferences that's in tune with your preferences, even when this configuration space is very, very large. There's also this consumer gap thing. Again, I'm just going to acknowledge that there's also lots of data that shows that there would be a lot more IoT devices out there in the wild, and that people would be much more interested in buying and using if they had some of these privacy, this definition of privacy issues resolved. And so essentially what this draft, which we'll get back to in just a moment, is really pushing towards is this idea where we're moving towards a future state which enables much more advanced personalization. And we don't mean this in the sort of marketing way. We mean it so that individuals and households have the ability to personalize things regarding what data goes where. Now, again, I want to be very, very clear about what I mean by data in this case. This is a more abstract semantic definition of data, right? When we talk about things like temperature data as it may flow from the smart thermometer in my home to perhaps some cloud backend, we would like to be able to have a surface in which we can express preferences around whether there are certain purposes under which we would accept that data to flow, and perhaps others which we do not accept or may wish to enforce some limitations on. And so what this does then is it enables a sort of experiential notion of privacy where people's individual or their household privacy expectations can be matched to these policies. And again, that this friction element is very, very, very important because there's also a tremendous amount of literature in the usability space, the usable privacy space, that shows that, and I'm sure we're all very familiar with this, many times when people are presented with these options, they pose a barrier to the usage of these IoT devices. And so the default behavior is just to click next, 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 yes, 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 okay, whatever. And we want to be able to change that dynamic. And a lot of this is related to the ability to have this protocol to allow this signaling to be occurring, you know, not when you're trying to use the device, but potentially in advance. And so this is really kind of in a nutshell. This diagram doesn't appear in the current draft, but it may in some updated form in the near future. But what this is showing is the overall architecture. So one would have, of course, a device which is being onboarded to the home network. Perhaps there's a network gateway or a phone or some other device which then publishes this privacy declaration, which contains the semantics that defines what the sort of individual or household privacy policy is. This then goes into some destination, which is then accessible by the device, the IoT device operators. This need not be something which transits the internet, but it could. This could be something that also occurs locally as well. But then as this is ratified, the network then captures essentially evidence that this device operator has seen that a policy exists. And this signaling mechanism and this acknowledgement mechanism is actually really what's at the heart and the core of this. You'll note that I'm not talking about things like enforcement actions or anything like that. All of these things are potentially possible and interesting, but they're a fairly drastic extension of what the minimum viable version of this sort of looks like, according to the draft. I'm just going to very quickly point to this slide, but it's not really worth kind of going through this in too much detail. It's much better to just kind of read through the draft, but we're potentially relying on other standards and protocols here in IETF, as well as those that originate elsewhere, in order to provide the sort of operational hooks for this work. But two sort of frequently asked questions that often come up, which I'll kind of head off, hopefully very briefly. So there's this auditability aspect, right? If we go back to this sort of traditional view of privacy where we do want to have some anonymity, maybe we want to prevent people from just scraping these policies and then learning things about us. So this is something which would then, you know, have a secure pathway. And yes, these personal preferences are potentially identifiable, but you don't necessarily have to send all of them in order to configure a device that maybe only needs to know about a subset of them. So there's necessarily some aspects of the protocol that we'll have to negotiate which subset is transmitted around the network. But finally, I just want to get to the most important slide here, which is the call to action. So I'd like to work with device makers and protocol experts, of which I think there are several of us in this room, to try to implement proof of concept implementations of these privacy preference declarations. Much of the feedback that I've got, especially from those in the IoT vendor community and the very large platform provider space, say, well, we'd like to see how this could actually work in practice. It's very easy for us to rely on the literature as well as the existing protocols to sort of build out the idea and the concept and the theory here, but we'd like to prove this out a little bit more, in addition to obviously getting feedback on the draft, which we'd like to eventually have become an RFC, but we want to sort of beat it up a little bit and see where we might need to make changes before we get there. Any questions?
Michael Richardson at the microphone. Daniel, can you tell us, like, I don't want to send you away elsewhere because I think actually we have to be involved in this, but I am wondering whether or not the IETF is the right venue for this. I think that there's some participation for us, but I'm thinking that some other kind of consumer enforcement type place, not a technical place, might be a better place to do some of this work, as well as, and but let's us talk about the bits on the wire, not about the policies.
Yep.
Maybe, yeah.
So I see why you would say that. I'll also head off that question by saying that there is a simultaneous effort within IoT industry consortia to work on this. I also want to emphasize, as I did earlier, though, that the enforcement piece is really not critical here. Really what we actually need is a signaling protocol that enables this information to be transmitted in a standardized way, independent of IoT device vendors and so on and so forth. This data then requires models in order to ensure that that standardization of the primitives that you might like to write a policy about can be transmitted and understood. And that's why I think that this is work that's well positioned to be taken up at IETF.
So this maybe is Vicky Risk from ISC. I was really thinking along the same lines as Michael was. One of my concerns is that the point at which I'd like to know what personal privacy options are going to turn my IoT device into a brick is really before I buy it.
Yes.
So there does need to be some, and perhaps it is in, an IoT industry forum, but there needs to be some tie-in with labeling or something that says, these settings are consistent with actually getting some use out of the device. Otherwise, it's too late by then.
Yeah.
And I understand that has nothing to do with the signaling, but it's part of the solution.
Yeah, I'll keep this brief because I think we're quite short on time. But thank you. Yes, I do definitely recognize that that's very important, and that's a potential benefit of a scheme such as this. But the protocols are necessary, actually, I would argue first. These labeling schemes are wonderful, and there's been many efforts at them. But if there's no standardization, again, around the primitives that we use to discuss the data flows that exist between the IoT device and its sensors and so on and the backend services, then we don't have any way to actually mechanically determine whether or not the policy that the device manufacturer provides us is aligned with our own personal privacy policies. Right now, it's a natural language processing problem. It's designed for lawyers. It doesn't work very well.
Yep.
So
I 100% agree with Daniel here that we're in a chicken and egg situation. If we don't define it, or if somebody doesn't define it, then there's no way that anybody else can latch on to this in terms of if they want to do regulation or whatever. If as a consumer, if you want to see what this stuff is, there needs to be some vocabulary and grammar around it. Now, two comments. The first of which is it's important to separate the policy from the protocol.
Yep.
And that will help your problem, because then we could do stuff like stick it in a, God help me, mud file.
We actually have two drafts for a reason here, by the way, but yes.
Right. And the second point that I was going to make is that the vendors might be reticent to do this because they may feel that they have an incentive to not do it. So we have it may prove difficult to get some vendors to work with you on that. I think you probably have found that out already. And this leads to an issue, which is how do you know you have the vocabulary correct? How do you know you have the grammar correct? So that's a challenge that I think we have to just understand, that if you place a stake in the ground and then you say, here's the stake in the ground, here's where the IETF is going. And by the way, if we adopt this stuff and we say, we're doing this, and especially if we can get some of the peer standards organizations to step up and say, oh, look at that, like Etsy or whoever, right? That might actually bring the vendors to the table.
Thank you. I'll just respond to that very briefly. So we face the trifecta of problems here, right? One is that there is no signaling mechanism in order to actually transit the intent or the data, which is this very, very rich vocabulary, which is problem 2, right? And then problem 3 is then, of course, the adoption problem. But as Elliot pointed out, right, this is a chicken and egg problem because we don't yet have an RFC that defines the signaling mechanism. We don't yet have an RFC and potentially collaboration with an organization like W3C, though folks have been expressing a lot of interest from that side about this, right? And then, of course, the vendor adoption requires other pathways as well. But again, I'd just like to emphasize that we need to take a first step here. So please reach out if this is in any way interesting to you or your organization. Let's get that signaling mechanism off the ground first, and then I think we can see where that takes us. And I think there's a long way to go there. Thanks.
And thank you. Thank you. which leads, oh, sorry, I'm not speaking to the mic. Which leads up to our last presentation for today. No?
Second to last, I think.
Second to last. Oh, jeez.
Sorry to disappoint you there.
No, we will share. Yeah, this agenda was bashed in the last 24 hours a lot. What's the
Exactly, that's the one.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Oh, thank you. And thank you to the chairs for letting me present here this last minute edition on using MUD in constrained environments. This draft has been co-authored by Hugo Dama and Jaime Jimenez and is based on earlier work done by Jaime in the Thing to Thing research group. And yeah, the motivation we have for this draft is that yeah, with the predefined methods of DHCP and LLDP, we have the problem that MUD URLs can be manipulated, and a device could basically impersonate another device by specifying a MUD URL that yeah, isn't yeah, that doesn't belong to it. And also we have the problem that both DHCP and LLDP are commonly not available in constrained environments because yeah, you might be using IPv6, which is quite common, and use Slack instead of DHCP then, or you use IEEE 802.15.4 and therefore don't have LLDP. And yeah, therefore we thought of extending the MUD architecture that has been proposed in AFC 8520 with a MUD receiver or cohort MUD receiver that is able to receive MUD URLs using CoAP with two possible submission flows. So the receiver itself could initiate the process of obtaining MUD URLs, but the thing could also initiate the process. And yeah, the architecture is flexible in that regard that the MUD receiver could also act as the MUD manager. So both entities yeah, could be, or both components could be based or could be fulfilled by the same entity basically in the network. Yeah, the main features of the draft are then that besides adding yeah, entries to the, or proposing the addition of entries to the core parameters registry with other registries for performing discovery using CoAP, yeah, we propose using CWTs to bind MUD URLs to a device and have them assigned by a trusted manufacturer, so that yeah, there's yeah, you have a guarantee that the MUD URL is associated correctly with the device, but also that yeah, the URL is bound to the device in question. And yeah, for that we yeah, would use a proof of possession mechanism then to yeah, actually bind the MUD URL to the device using the CWT. Yeah, this already brings me to the end of this short teaser of the draft. So we just posted the first versions of it to the data tracker, and we have a set of to-dos that we need to address. So first of all, we need to flesh out the proof of possession mechanism that is going to be used in this context, and also have to deal with security considerations. And yeah, I was talking to Michael earlier, and he also proposed using a different term than MUD receiver. So this is something we need to discuss. And also we were discussing that one of his drafts regarding MUD queries, I think, or this device ID could also be merged into this draft. Yeah, so there are a couple of things we need to address, but we also have a couple of open questions. So, for example, one thing that we didn't consider in this version now was that devices could also host their own MUD files, but this might actually be out of scope of the draft and could rather be a deployment consideration. So this needs a bit of discussion. And of course, the more important question is whether this is a worthwhile standardization of effort in the first place, and whether, yeah, the work on this draft should continue, maybe also on this working group then. And yeah, that's from my side. Are there any comments or questions that should be addressed? Otherwise,
I want to raise my hand.
oh,
Dang it. Yeah, you raise me? Yeah.
I'll let you raise your hand.
I'm almost like Alexei. So this is Hank speaking without a chair hat on. We are using MUD for as a discovery mechanism in rats, and there are multiple, at least two conveyance mechanisms in rats, and one of them was a certificate like a dev ID, and one was a CWT, and is an EAT, an entity attestation token actually. So there are things that are, and I called them trusted documents, which was a, I don't know, delirious choice of words. So we should have a category of documents that you have that problem, or messages like data items, secure data items, probably way better. And we have a category where that are very unprotected, and then URL, the MUD URI is, well, compromisable, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Also, I wanted to highlight that this is obviously not only the things here. You wrote constrained environments, but the thing here actually can be anything, right? So of all the sizes. So I think I like the IoT device story, where I think can have multiple classes, as we will see here in the next biz. But I think this we can start with co-op here, of course, and I think the problem is in the right space.
right. Thank you.
Oh, the last sentence was with my chair hat on, actually.
Thanks.
Yeah, just a moment. So this is great stuff to pursue, and I cannot tell you whether this will lead to a standardization effort or not, but if we don't pursue it, we won't find out. Just two comments. When we use the word IoT in the IETF, we often have in mind that there are constrained devices, but this just means that we do something that constrained devices can participate in. That doesn't mean there is an absolute requirement that all devices have to be constrained. So the other thing, when we talk about MUD, the security model we have in mind needs to include all players. And that includes, for instance, the WebPKI we actually use to authenticate the use of the MUD URL. So if we don't have that in the picture, we have an incomplete picture. And now this is not constrained, this IoT concept, but if you want to support disconnected places, you cannot use WebPKI. Excuse me, you cannot rely on WebPKI. Yeah.
So if there are no other questions, I think this is a good discussion to be continued on the mailing list. I see Carsten returning to the mic. Oh, no, just to the front. Oh, yeah, because now we will hear about 7228 bis.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to quickly point out that we did have an update of 7228 bis. So those who don't know what 7228 was, that was a 2014 RFC that helped us in our discussions to actually meaningfully use terms such as constrained devices. So before we did this document, everybody just answered, well, every device is constrained. It cannot use infinite power and all that. Yeah, we knew that, but we needed to have some more quantitative ways to talk about that. So at the time, we always joked that we didn't have to get this right because we would clearly fix this within a decade. And yeah, here we are. So the 7228 bis expands the existing document. It's not trying to deprecate anything in there that seemed not necessary. But we now have very nice new classes of devices. We don't stop at class 2 anymore, and we actually give their peers class numbers as well, so you can talk about raspberries, various smartphones, and so on. So this is the main new content of this document, and specifically the fresh revision finally addresses a review by Martine. Thank you very much. And that includes a lot of editorial improvements, and there also were some fixes proposed by Med. So this is great. And there are two technical changes. One is about explicitly talking about header compression, and the other one is about isolation functionality. The header compression one is that when we talk about physical bitrate, we try to give an indication of how important header compression is going to be for this particular physical bitrate. That's, of course, all very approximately. What you already can deduct from having some 3 orders or 2 orders of magnitude in each class. But it's pretty clear that you cannot do less than 10 bits per second solution without some form of header compression. That just doesn't work. And you need to make it part of your architecture. You cannot just do it in a pair somewhere in the network. While if you have more than a megabit per second, header compression maybe isn't that important anymore. You still can get some benefits, but not much. So this is new. And the other observation on the isolation functionality is that we now have a separate, cannot call it class because these are really just bits that you can set independently. We can write about devices that have a way during the boot process to lock away some of the memory, either completely lock it away or make it read-only. And that makes it possible to transfer control to software that you may not trust with being in control of those data in that memory. Okay, so these are small changes, and you probably can already guess that we are getting close to a working group last call, in particular after the recent reviews. And my plan here would be to just do that working group last call, because that is usually the best way to actually extract reviews from people. It's a threat. If you don't review this, we will publish it. Yeah, then address the copious reviews we will get on that working group last call. Do not wait a year like with Martin's review, and then actually go ahead publishing it. Questions? Esko.
Yeah, Eskodijk. It's nice that you say that last part, because we were just talking in the breaks that working group last call is evolving into a working group first call here. A bit of the reverse of what happened to the term RFC as a request for comments. So this is getting interesting, but okay, it works. So good idea.
Yeah, it's an informational document. The world will not fall apart if we get something wrong, but we shouldn't do that too much.
Michael Richardson, Mike, I definitely reviewed it 12 months ago, something like that. I was like, why haven't we published this already? It's done. And as you say, we should fix it more often rather than get it perfect the first time. So,
second time.
Yeah, let's do that. Do that. Working group last call. Let's get it before Christmas.
Thank you for the support.
Please, I will ask our esteemed note taker to minute this, the action.
Yeah, and this is Hank with no hat on in the line, but not standing up. There once upon a time, we started to have confidential computing consortium claims here in the IETF REDS working group. They are part of the attestation results for secure interactions are for the draft, and maybe we should compare notes with your bitmask. I think that seems to be feasible.
Yes.
And I'm very, very sure that I will force Thomas to join the discussion.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are at time. Yeah, I think the whole hour is gone. Any other business, anything that people can want to very quickly bring to working group attention? Okay, if not, thank you for coming. See you next time. Shall we ask for hour and a half next time, maybe? Because we'll see.
As soon as we do, excellent.
Well,
I think this is better than the board. I don't think we are.